Fast and Furious 11 is one of the most anticipated projects for a long time, but the production seems to have majorly slowed down in recent months. There have been very few updates about this exciting sequel, which is very frustrating given how many great plot lines were set up in Fast X. The film has always been marketed as the final movie in this long-running franchise, but even that may not be true anymore. There have also been several interesting spin-off movies announced in the Fast and Furious universe, but production seems to have slowed on these too. Hobbs and Race is the most obvious example. The project was announced several years ago, following Hobbs' return in Fast X, supposedly releasing between Fast X and Fast 11. However, with less than a year to go until Fast 11 supposedly wraps up the saga for good, it's hard to see where this prospective spin-off fits into the equation. Although very little was actually confirmed about the prospective spin-off, there was still discussion of a Hobbs and Race movie happening after Johnson's character returned to the action franchise following the post-credits scene of Fast X. The scene confirmed that Agent Hobbs was the next figure in Dan Torreya's crosshairs, and the spin-off movie would have likely followed his attempts to bring Hobbs down, which probably would have been unsuccessful. Throughout Fast X, Reyes goes up against Dom Toretto and his friends as revenge for his father's death during the events of Fast 5. He quickly became a fan-favorite villain, with Momo's eccentric performance cementing him as the highlight of the most recent sequel. Most audiences assumed that Fast 11 would simply be a continuation of this rivalry, but the surprise reveal of Johnson's return at the end of Fast X seemed to steer that theory off course, as it seemed like too much to fit into a single movie, especially the final one. That's why Hobbs and Race was such an exciting prospect. It allows these two characters to flesh out their dynamic and conclude their vendetta against each other without interfering with the existing story of Fast X and Fast 11. Without it, there's every possibility that the grand finale of this action franchise will be overstuffed. It needs to be Dom's story, and bringing Hobbs back right at the end feels like it could be distracting. Unfortunately, there has been very little development on the project since it was announced in June 2023. The last piece of information from the studio is the spin-off's name, and that was almost 2 years ago. With Fast and Furious 11 supposed to release in 2026, it seems like there isn't enough time to squeeze this Hobbs and Race spin-off in between the 10th and 11th Fast movies. It's unclear whether Hobbs and Race is even happening anymore. The series seems to be stuck in development purgatory, and none of the upcoming projects have even begun filming yet. It could be many years before Fast and Furious gets back on track, and that prospective release date for Fast 11 grows less and less probable by the day. This becomes even more concerning as Johnson has several dramatic movies in development, including the recently announced Breakthrough and the Martin Scorsese's Hawaiian-based film. Alternatively, the reason for both movies' delayed productions could be that they're going to be filmed simultaneously, with the spin-off leading directly into the story of Fast 11. This seems unlikely, but it's the only way both movies could feasibly release before the end of next year. This would be a very interesting way of handling the series' conclusion, effectively creating a Dan Torreya's trilogy of movies that bring all the characters together for one final battle. Ultimately, it's hard to imagine how Fast 11 is even possible without this Hobbs and Race spin-off coming first. Most audiences assumed that Hobbs' return would be woven into the final Fast and Furious movie somehow, but the fact that this sequel was announced in the first place proves that was never the plan. If the writers have changed their minds and Hobbs and Race doesn't end up happening, then Fast 11 is essentially going to be 2 movies stuffed into one. Fast 11 needs to go back to the saga's roots, not waste time with Hobbs' subplot. Alternatively, Fast 11 could simply ignore the Fast X post-credit scene and save Hobbs' return for another time. Fast 11 is reportedly going to be the final entry in the main series, but there's every possibility that more spin-offs and prequels will be coming in the future. This could be the new plan for Hobbs and Reyes,